Section 3.
People are like, oh my God, I'm not buying this book.
No, seriously, people, buy this book.
You know,
I'm sitting at home saying, next time somebody wants to filibuster, they should just start on page 1 and just read it through. You did sections of Section 3 today in your reading.
Mm-hmm.
The opening, my son, my daughter, is incredibly powerful.
Thank you.
The contrast then between the news reports and the description, the extrapolation on the action, the pages and pages of the gun said.
Mm-hmm.
It's impossible to encounter this and not be in tears. I don't know how anyone could. It's horrifying that it's necessary, but it's so necessary.
It's horrifying anyway, you know. When I started to do, I don't know if you noticed, but I really tried not to use names that were familiar to everyone,
Right.
because I wanted people to get a sense of the drumbeat. So there may be something that brings it up front and you see it on the network news, and usually it's because there was film or, you know, it was at a particularly volatile time or something. But even as you're looking at that, for every day you're looking at that, it's still happening in the background.
Right.
You know, it's happening to people whose names you never hear.
Right.
And there are 2 times when you usually will see the mother. It's in the beginning when they're telling her what's happened to her child, and at the end when the person deemed responsible for the death of that child is deemed not responsible, and then she goes away, you know, and the idea that you expect her to just fold back quietly into some semblance of a life. You know, sometimes things happen and you see them flying in psychologists and they said, oh, well, she can't be left alone and we need to support her. You don't get that. You might get something like that from the church or something, but they're just forgotten, you know. I wanted to kind of mix that up and then have, in each of those cases, have you think this was another person who came from a person. And that person is still with us and still trying to deal with, especially if you lose someone and ultimately no one's responsible.
Right.
Nothing happened, which means they should be walking back in the door, but they're not, you know. So I felt by visiting those cases, 2 things were happening. One was you could see that a lot of that tragedy sprang from nothing. It sprang from, I thought you were carrying a gun, knife, whatever. And once again, somebody killed themselves while their hands were behind their back. And there are more of those cases.
Right.
You know, you felt threatening to me. You know, I couldn't. I mean, if you got up from your seat right now and lurched toward me, you'd feel threatening. But I bet you, if I shot you, I'd be in jail in about 5 minutes. You know, I can't say that I felt frightened for my life. You know, but all of these things become excuses. I took this life, and I'm really going to get in trouble. No, you won't get in trouble for it now. You know, if you can just say someone scared me, and you can get off. So I just wanted to see, you know, how much this is, and I'm thinking now, thought recently, I should have just had that be the whole book, because it does keep going. And this is going to be a really strange connection for you. When John F. Kennedy was assassinated, and they had his funeral, they had the horse drawn, right, and there was this drum. There was this drum. I was a kid. I have never, ever forgotten that. And there's sometimes I can just hear it in my head. It's both, it has a grace and it is tragic. And I heard it again when I was writing these poems. Mm-hmm. So when I got to the one where, you know, the Jonathan Ferrell was shot 10 times, and when I first wrote that piece, the 10 times was all on one page. And then there was something about, as I turned the page, I heard that drum again. And I wanted people to know that I could just really keep doing that. More than those 10 times, you know. So our realities are different. You know, I have a son, and the idea that I now have to go back to what my parents told me in the beginning of my life, to be silent and to don't speak, that all that time has passed, and I find myself saying the same things to my adult son,
Right.
where I should be saying, hey, go out, be active, make noise. And I can't really say that to him, because
Right.
making noise makes you a target.
Right.
You know, so it's like nothing, we haven't evolved at all. We're back to make yourself as small as possible, speak correctly to people, you know.
Keep your
I mean,
hands on the wheel,
yeah,
all of that.
yeah, you know, the fact that the other day I took all of my papers and things out of my glove compartment and put them right above my, and as I was doing it, I was saying, I can't get stopped and do anything except say I'm gonna, yeah, and come on.
Right.
Really, who thinks about that? Who thinks that you can't go in your own glove compartment and do anything? But if I'm not alive to say it didn't happen the way they said it happened, then it happened that way.
Exactly. You come back to Emmett Till a number of times in the book. You had that bizarre choose your adventure.
It's bizarre, isn't it? I know.
It just, I don't know where you came up with that. Tell me where that came from.
My class. But the thing about teaching is it's a tremendously exciting thing for me, because I see it like a tunnel of energy. I'm constantly getting things from them and getting things from our discussions. And we had a long discussion on chance, turning this way instead of that way, making that choice instead of that one. If he had, you know, we were talking about 9/11 and people who got sick that day or stopped off
Right.
before they went to work, and how, you know, and living with that, yeah. So I used to love those books. I used to get one, and I would make all the different choices so I could reach all possible endings, and they go, it's okay, you know. So when I saw, and I didn't know that Emmett Till's mother was trying to get him to go somewhere else.
Right.
That she was trying to get him to go to Nebraska. I did not know that. And when I learned that, I thought if he'd gone, we wouldn't have this story. I mean,
Right.
we wouldn't have the tragedy, but we wouldn't have this story. And so then I tried to look at other points of his life where if he had done this, you know, if he hadn't stopped at the store, if he hadn't, you know, if the casket had been closed instead of open, we wouldn't have that iconic photo that then was used to basically train generations of black children after that, you know. And I didn't want it to, I'm always looking for some kind of unexpected entry point into a story, especially stories that have been told again and again. So it was a different thing. If I had just said, guess what? Emmett's mother wanted to go to Nebraska, and written that story, the element of chance, I mean, you stopping and thinking, oh my God, if only, wouldn't be the same.
Right.
So I layered it on to those stories at first, and then said turn to page, and it would be the page that the poem was
That
on.
you're on, right.
Because it's a story often told, and I'm looking for a way to tell it to you that's going to get you to look at it again. And that's, you know, what I said about, if you're tired of the stories, let me show you something in the execution that's going to pull you back into it and make you look at it a different way. You know, the fact that you don't want to read anything else about Rodney King, but the fact that he drowned,
Right.
you know, and that people made comments on that, not so much who he was, but the fact that, you mean he couldn't swim, you know.
Right.
So I'm always kind of look for the ugly and the beautiful, and look for the beautiful in the ugly somehow. Try to find, look, you know, lift it up, look at the underbelly, get behind it, whatever, and find something that you hadn't heard or hadn't seen, or some way. I have a poem. It's not in this book, but I'm fascinated with cartoons. I watch cartoons. I like old cartoons. I don't like new cartoons. So it's just like Popeye, and I'll, you know. So one day I'm watching Popeye, and I go, "Where'd Olive? What's her story? Why is she? Where are her people? She's on the docks, just walking around. She's got Popeye. She's got Bluto, who's obviously an abuser. So what is that? And she keeps going back and forth between them. Whose baby is Sweet Pea? There's like just an errant baby just walking around, you know. And I thought, oh, I'll write this funny poem about her. And I wrote the first line. And it was supposed to be Olive Oil Talks to People magazine or something. It was going to be funny about these two guys and how she can't decide. And the first line was, "If you must know me, first know this." And it got serious.
Right.
It got serious, just like that, you know. So things that we trust in as being in these categories. This is a funny thing. This is a serious thing. This is an ironic thing. You know, I think one of my goals as a writer is to pull them out of those categories and to wedge them into another one, you know, that's going to be surprising or disturbing or something like that.